yucca, and yucca is a very stringy plant, and if you find those little strings on plants, that's a good sign that they will make very good rope. Okay? Here's another one. This one's made of the palms. This is palm rope. This rope here is made from the bark of a tree. This is the inside bark of a tree. This is the outside bark of the tree. Okay? And so we would use that to make rope. Something else the rope was made of is something you see in the tree. Moss. This is Spanish moss made into rope. This is what it looks like when it's dead. Not the gray moss. We would take that and boil it to kill the bugs and then dry it out, and that would be stuck underneath animal skins. Imagine that being your bed last night. Yeah? Well, we don't charge that much as you paid last night. Anyways, might get a few bed bugs. Anyway, so that would be the moss rope. One more rope I want to show you is one of my favorites. My son made it. That's made out of the silk corn husk. The corn husk. And so rope could be made out of anything that's got fiber in it. And the natives definitely made lots of rope. They used that rope to tie fish hooks. They used that rope to tie nets. They used that rope to make traps. That's made of grapevines. And when the fish swim inside, sharp spikes are facing in. When they get to the back and see no way out, they come back that hole they came, but now the sharp spikes are looking right at their eyes. To take the fish out, we untie the inner basket and open it right up. Another way to catch a fish is to use a spear. This is a gig. It's carved out of bone, and if I see a fish swim by, I can harpoon it. And as soon as I do, the spearhead sticks into the fish and comes off, and that fish begins fighting, trying to get away. As he's floundering trying to get away, if I go yanking on the rope, this will be gone, or come out, and the fish will be gone. So we'll let the fish swim until he's wore out, because everywhere the fish goes, so does this float. Another one of our gourds, except this time not cut, used to hold air, and it carries, shows me where that fish might be hiding or waiting. When the natives killed animals, it wasn't to be mean. It was surviving. There was no stores to go to. The animal skins become leather. That's where we get leather shoes, leather leggings, leather coats, dresses. All of our clothing would have been made of animal hides or woven plant fibers. So we didn't have a cloth like I'm wearing. This is something we will get later in the time period we're dressed in the colonial times. We'll talk about that in a minute. The animal skin can be turned into leather by using the animal brain. Animal brain has tannin. When it's rubbed into the hide, it tans the hide. Now, if you don't tan the hide, it's going to rot. Or you could dry it into rawhide. Now, rawhide isn't tanned, it's just dried. And so if this gets wet, it's going to start rotting again. As long as I keep it dry or wet it and then dry it again, it'll be okay. It's in an in-between type version, I guess you could say. So we can take that and we can cut that into lacing, so now we can tie things together. Okay? We can take that rawhide and we can weave it into ropes and make pouches out of it. And if I see a flock of birds flying over, I might get us something to eat today. Tastes like chicken though. This is something used by native people all over the place. We think of this today as South American. All over the place they had stuff like this. Maybe I'll take the deer's hair off his body to make that leather, and I'll use it to make my headdress. Or I'll use it for disguising a fish hook. We had all types of purposes for animal hairs. Maybe I'll take the animal's bones, and I'll take them out of their body, I'll break them on the rocks, and I'll scrape them on the rocks, and I'll get them sharp, and I'll make picks and pins and daggers, and handles for knives with the animal's bones. Does anybody want to get their ear pierced? I've got a sharp bone just for that. No? Maybe I'll take the deer's toenails and I'll boil them until they're melted into glue. That's how glue was made, not just tree sap, animal hoof, animal horn, animal bone, fish skins, lots of things can make glue. One other thing we would use these for is in our dancing. You might think we use bells, and today you will hear bells in native dancing, but traditionally, bells is not something we had. A bell is something that the Europeans had brought on those strange animals that they brought from across the ocean. And so we heard them on their cows and horses and goats at first. Traditionally in our dancing, we would have noisemakers that we wore to keep our feet in time with our drums. And that would be a rattle made out of deer toenails. Inside of a deer's toenail is a very sharp little bone. And that sharp little bone is perfectly shaped to be what? That's what's inside the deer's toenail. What ties it on there? The deer's tendon. We'll take the tendon out of the deer's body, soak it in water, pound it with a rock until wet. When it's wet, it stretches a little bit, and then it's wrapped, and then it dries, and then we put the glue on it, and that keeps it dry. And that's how we would make stuff. A lot of work to make something, huh? But that's how it was back then. We might be hard for us to go back then and live because we're not used to that, but for them, that was their life. That's what they knew, and that's all they knew. And so it was normal for them to have to do a lot of things to get by. And so using every bit of that animal was what it was about. We didn't kill him to be mean. The hunter's prayer was said, and when the hunter's prayer was said, they used all of him, even the guts. That's used for bait to catch alligators and such, crabbing and fishing. I've got the alligator's tail right here, made into a case. That's where I keep the swordfish nose. See there? What do you think I should do with it? Put it back? All right. Maybe I'll take the alligator foot and make a pouch too. There's a pocket. Natives will often take the animal's feet and clean out the bones and meat and make tobacco canteens or little pouches to put stuff in. See there? I can put stuff right down in there. What's in your wallet? Mine makes a good back scratcher. The alligator teeth I wear around my neck here, these came from Big Giant one that was 13 foot long. And so when we killed the animals, we used all of them, their claws, their teeth. I'm wearing bear claws here in my ears. And so these became jewelry, teeth and claws of the animals as like trophies we wore. Okay? The feathers of the birds, we wore them as honors bestowed upon us by our people. You don't just wear a bunch of feathers. You're given the rights a lot of times to wear certain things. And those feathers were given the rights to. Tattooing was the same thing. You didn't just start tattooing yourself. You had to have that right of wearing what you're wearing. And so that's how we could identify you, was your feather, your headdress, your tattoo, your language. These were all the identifications. We know what village you're from, what people you belong to, even sometimes what clan you are. In the eastern United States, many Native Americans are matriarchal, which means when the men get married, they were not allowed to marry inside their village. They had to marry outside the village, and that's where they would go to live, making the women owners of the homes. And so the matriarchs, the clan mothers, had lots of power. Younger girls, like this age right here, would be playing with Barbie's grandma. This is what the dolls would be made of, corn husk. And also here in Florida, the Seminole dolls are made of the husk of the palm husk. And so the dolls, the girls will learn to make clothing for, they'll learn to cook food for, they'll learn to build a house for, and make everything a child would need. Basically, it's a teaching tool to teach the young girl how to be a good mother. And by the time she's 13, she'll be the tribal babysitter. And by the time she's old enough to get married, she'll stay in her village and she'll die in her village. See, we're matriarchal. The husband's job was putting food on the table and protection, being a warrior, protect the village. And so boys often had to learn lots of different skill sets in their toys. And so boys learned how to carve things in wood. They learned how to make and imitate animal sounds. Bird whistles and bird callers. And so bird calls, just like that, eventually is going to lead to whistles and flutes. Want to hear it? This is a double flute. Crowd goes wild. Now, the Du Bois also learned a lot of games that taught hunting skills. One of the toys children played with was marbles, which teach us the skill of aiming. The boys played a game with a stone called a chunky stone. Everybody say that, chunky stone. This would be rolled down the field. The boys would line up with spears, try and hit the spot where it's going to land for points. This taught the skill of throwing at something moving. If you can hit this, you can hit a rabbit. And that would be the first place the boys would learn to hunt, was in the garden with rabbits and squirrels. And by the time they're 10 years old, we'll let them go out in the woods. But at your age right now, how old are you? 10? You would be in the woods with your friends lined up in a long line, and you'd have your bows and arrows, hooping and hollering, making lots of noise as your line moves through the woods. Your job is to scare the deer way over there where the best shooter is waiting. And he would be wearing the deer's coat, the deer's face as a mask, and underneath his bow and arrow, and he would be acting like the deer. Maybe a couple hunters would be doing that. And so the young boys would do a chase, and they would scare the deer into the spots the best shooters were waiting. So a lot of the hunting was done by the men, not saying that they did all of it, but they had to be very good with the weapons. By the time the boys were 15 years old, they were ready to become a warrior. And they would go through a ceremony, a manhood ceremony, to prove their worthiness and